Just the top part from down to number 4. There.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
There
looking
you go.
better.
We see 0.6.
There we
Oh, not
go.
open.
Now it's decided to join me here. There we go. All right. Okay. So we'll start off. We'll call the meeting to order. And first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining on. I'm really pleased to see the number of people that have joined on in this new virtual world. It's been a while since we've convened as a club, and certainly looking forward to see if we can't make this a wonderful educational format and make it work for everyone. So we're going to try to keep the program to more of a educational component when we meet. So I've put the agenda up in front of you now.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, Margaret, you need to mute.
I'll mute her.
Oh, that's okay. Mikhail can take care of that. Okay, that's great. Thanks. No problem. So the agenda is before you. I'm asking for someone to move the agenda as presented. So if I can get a mover, if you can hold your hand up, there is a reaction key along the bottom that will allow you to also hold your hand up that way. So.
Yeah, it's so close.
Did you get close? Okay, and do we have a seconder? Okay. Any additions that you would like to add to this before I call for the question? Mikhail, you see anything there? I can only see a few people at a time. So.
No.
Oh,
Nope.
I forgot to unmute myself.
Oh,
Bryce, is there any way we can talk about that, the fee that we're gonna pay this guy to go through the report or whatever? Can we discuss that again?
that's actually board discussion. It's
Oh,
already in
okay.
the budget.
Yeah, this
So
is the
yeah,
record.
so
Never
it'll be
mind.
on. Yeah, it's going to be on the agenda for our next one. This is actually a general board meeting
Yeah,
tonight.
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Klaus. Good call. All good. But it is on the agenda for that one as well.
Okay, good.
So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, a couple of hands up. Seeing everybody. Okay. All right, hands down. Any opposed? Please hold your hands up. Just need to record any contrary votes. Okay, Mikkel, have you swept the group? None? Okay. Yep. All right, we'll move on to the next item, and that's the approval of the minutes. The minutes were circulated, and they were also on the website. So if I can have a motion to approve the minutes as circulated. Looking for a mover.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? I think Ian had his hand up and Klaus as well. So we'll pick one. Okay. Any errors or omissions that we would like to address within the minutes? No, nobody had any? Seeing anything, Mikhail, on your end? No. Okay, there being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think we've garnered all those. Hands down. Any contrary minded, please. Okay. Not seeing any on mine. Okay. Checked all the participants, Mikhail. Have you on your side?
Yeah, I can't see
on mine. I didn't see any. Yeah, I didn't see any. Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much. First item that I want to roll into is I want to make an introduction of the board. Some of you weren't in attendance of the AGM, so may or may not know who is on the board, but I'm really pleased to tell you that we have a full slate of table officers and a full contingent of directors, that being 7 directors, and a full slate of table officers. So I'm your current president, Bryce Herman. Our first vice president is Klaus Voss. And you can see Klaus, his name is up there. He'll give you a wave. second vice president is Dwayne Robinson. And Dwayne, I know, is on. I saw him earlier, so you'll see him in the group. Our treasurer again for this year is Dave Bruce. So Dave is on. And our secretary is Robert Hunter. So Rob is on. Thanks, Rob. And your slate of directors, and I'll give you the committee that they are leading. Now, I want to make sure that everybody understands that these guys are all in, these folks are all in roles of leading a committee. And they will be looking for general members to get involved to assist. So the workload is not meant that one person is going to do it all, but they will be asking at meetings and they'll be saying, look, we're looking at doing this project. Is there a couple people that can hold their hand up and say, yes, I'm going to jump in and help? If we don't get that help, some of the things that you would like to see may not happen. Just strictly because there won't be enough resource to make it happen. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the position of a committee leader does not mean you're meant to roll up your sleeves and do every ounce of that work. So your 7 elected directors, Lawrence Bergstrand has agreed to lead the governance committee. And Murray Willis is our member communications committee. Mikhail Kjelstrom, I believe I got that last name correct. Close enough. All right, he's our technology guy, hence the reason I keep going to him, because he's our guy that keeps us all together and makes it work. And is going to be working on streamlining some of our web page, etc. Board development is Gary Martin. Gary was coming on. I saw him coming on screen. And Nancy Burkhold is going to be doing events and special projects. Joanne Nicholas is going to be doing fundraising and sponsorship. And Ian Farber has agreed to do education for the group. So that is your full slate. I think we have to give them a round of applause, although it'll be silent in many ways, but let's give them a little round. That's great. Everybody has agreed to get involved and participate. I think we've got an amazing group, and I think there's lots to come. So thank you for all of your support, and thank you to everybody who has volunteered their time. The next item on the agenda, I just want to touch base here with our email contacts to members. I know that's been somewhat spotty and a little bit intermittent. We've tried to keep it as current as we possibly can. We've got a new list of current members, which does encompass our branch life members. And so certainly if you know of anybody that has been missed accidentally, please send us an email and let us know so that we can accommodate them and get them on board. And I would also ask that you make sure that all of your contact information continues to stay current. So if, for example, all of a sudden you end up changing, email carriers or something like that, please notify us immediately so we can make adjustments. And then that way we know that you're getting the information. We will be doing e-blasts to you directly so that we can get information in front of you about educational opportunities, things that are going on with the club as we come into post-pandemic times, and we can run some small field days. We want to be able to get that message out. Yes, we will post it on our website, but we also understand that you may not be running to that website on an hourly basis, a daily basis. So we understand that and appreciate it. We want to get the information to you as timely as possible and in the best format possible. And we think that's probably by a direct email into your inbox. So we would ask that you please do that. You will have the ability on the bottom of those memos when they come to unsubscribe. So if you find that we're inundating you and we irritate you, you can unsubscribe. We hope that isn't the case. I'm pretty sure it's going to be valuable information for you. So please stay tuned, watch your inbox. Details will follow.
Who do they email to, Bryce?
They can email right directly to President Kamloops Beekeepers beekeepers.com. So, or they can just send it right into the info at as well. Everything is KamloopsBeekeepers.com. So it's easy to do. You can send it to info at, you can send it to treasurer at, secretary at, president at, board of directors at. So just BOD, and it'll go to every single one of the people I just announced for you. Okay.
Is there a public listing of who the members actually are? I always lose track if we're up to date. Are we members right now? How do I know?
If you received the email, you are, because the current email list went out. And so that's who we emailed to. So did you get notification of this meeting?
No, I got it from Murray.
Did you get it from Murray? Okay, so then I would recommend that you pop an email back, and if you've got Murray's contact, send it to Murray. Murray will send it on to the board. We'll get it, and we'll add it onto that email base and cross-reference it just to make sure you're on there, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right, and the same for anybody else. If you're not sure if you're on, please, by all means, pop us a quick email, and we'll cross-reference it to make sure we have the current data in our database for you.
Just a note, Bryce.
Yes.
The current list of members is on the website,
Yes, it is.
accessible that way. And I just updated, add one more today.
But
Okay.
I think only members can see that though, right? If you're not a member, you can't get to that section.
That could be the case.
Yeah.
So if you can't get to it, you're most likely not a member.
You're probably not on the current one. So and remember that it is based on the BCHPA membership. So you do need to be a member of BCHPA. You can be a member on the local level. You'll still get information that way, but it does need to be sent in specifically, because what Dave is talking about and what we have is our master list, which is full members. So, which are the ones that have voting power on this board, because we are a branch of the provincial and operate under their charter and bylaws.
Just a point, Bryce, I have been putting members that have paid the local dues as well on that list.
Perfect.
So for AGMs and that kind of thing, we'll generate a BCHPA membership list as well. It'll be different. Okay?
Correct, because they're the only ones that can vote at the AGM.
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah. So, you'll always have the ability, though, I mean, to reach out. I mean, if you have any information that you want to get to the board, you've got the ability to send an email to bod@kamloopsbeekeepers.com. That'll go to the entire board of directors. And if you have a question or a concern, you can get it onto an agenda and we will speak to it for you. So easy to access. It's not like we're going to be in hiding. All right. Any other questions before we move on to the business at hand for the evening? Just flipping through here to see if there's any that I see. I'm not seeing any. Okay. Based on that, we'll move on to our guest speaker, and the introduction of our guest speaker is going to be done by Ian. So Ian, I'm going to turn it over to you for the introduction of our guest speaker this evening.
Thank you, Bryce. It's my pleasure to welcome Dianne Dunaway, our guest speaker tonight. Dianne is the provincial bee inspector for this area, and Dianne has quite an impressive list of credentials regarding her beekeeping career. She has run up to 100 hives. Beekeepers always ask that, how many hives? Well, Dianne's at one time had up to 100. She currently holds a Bee Master certificate issued by SFU and the BCHPA. She's a certified BCHPA instructor, and she has offered beginner and intermediate beekeeping courses. Dianne is a past editor of the Bee Scene magazine. She held that position for 5 years. And at times, she's quite active with her local club and with the BCHPA. I always say that when beekeepers run into issues about beekeeping, bee health, that the bee inspector is the best ally to have, someone you can call and discuss possible situations that are happening in your hive. And Dianne has been keeping bees, she says, for about 25 years, which I tried to do the math, and that would put her starting beekeeping around 15 or 16 or 17. So welcome, Dianne, to the Kamloops Club, our first guest speaker, I think, after the pandemic started. So Dianne, over to you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to stop sharing so the screen is open for you, Dianne.
Okay. All right. We're going to just do a quick look at the inspection role that we have. And there we go. Are we there? Yes, we are.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Now I'm going to shut up and mute.
Well, we'll just go through just a brief introduction. I'm not certain how many new beekeepers we have, but the Apiary inspection program has been around for eons. There's our first bee inspector. You'll notice they spelled foul brood with a U, which is kind of interesting. But anyhow, we've got quite a rich history of care in the province for looking after bees. So the Bee Act was changed to the Animal Health Act Bee Regulation a few years ago, for anyone who was wondering about the legislation. And really, it's really focused on bee health. So we're not the heavies. We don't go around and lay fines on people, but we also, we do have a few reportable diseases and parasites. So American foul brood would be one of the main ones that, because it's so communicable and so persistent, we do ask that you please call us. It is confidential, and I've worked through eradicating foul brood from several beekeepers' apiaries at this point. It can be done, and no, we don't have to burn everything necessarily. So we are your ally, and it's also for the good of other beekeepers in the area. We've gotten away from the prophylactic use of antibiotics because we were getting resistance for American foul brood, and so we can help you connect with a veterinarian to issue a prescription if you need one. So yeah, any questions or if anything's a bit funky, by all means call. I had just a couple questions that came up prior to the meeting, and one had to do with just the act. And so really we're not officers, so to speak. So it's through cooperation. And the other question was about used equipment. And yes, it should be inspected even if you're giving it away. A lot of that comes down to the American foul brood again. And when we get into our spring management, we're going to talk a little bit about ways to sterilize that and keep everyone, including your own bees, safe. So there's a reminder here to please register with the apiculture program. It's a free, confidential service. Every 2 years, your name will come up. You will be notified, so you shouldn't have to worry about it once you're there. You can do it online. It takes less than 5 minutes. By registering, it also lets people know in the government that there is demand for the service and interest, and that way we'll receive a little bit of a budget for what we do. So thank you for that. And we do quite a bit of bee disease sampling. I'm going to chat a little bit how you can do your own as well. So I take samples and I send them to the lab. There's good ways to handle it. So we'll go through those protocols briefly tonight. And this is what an inspection report looks like. So you get a copy, I keep a copy. It's not that mysterious, it's just, I make all sorts of notes along the bottom of it about any mite checks we do so that you can keep track of which colony it was and what the percentage was. So it's all good information for your record keeping as well. And my contact information is on the BCHPA website. Quite a few you know already, and I believe it's on your Kamloops site as well. So thanks for that. And I'm going to do a little pivot over to our spring sort of management and you know, what's happening this time of year PowerPoint. So bear with me and we'll do a quick little changeover. I've got a very messy desktop and I didn't have time to clean it up today, but anyhow, yeah. And I want to thank Ian too, because I've used some of our information from our intermediate course. So I learned a really long time ago that beekeepers are very generous and that we are all standing on a lot of shoulders to get where we are with our beekeeping. So this is a bee from my bee yard a few years ago on a beautiful apricot blossom. And yeah, I just, how can you not fall in love with these little creatures? Right now in the spring, we're going to be looking at nutrition. I'm sure that most of you have been out feeding fondant or maybe pollen, syrup, etc. So we're going to talk just quickly, and we're covering for some of the beginners as well in review. But you know, of course, starvation. March can be a really cruel month, as a lot of us know. So make sure that your poor bees didn't make it through that cold snap and then all of a sudden run out of food at the very end. Their tank's empty. So that's one reason. We typically have a dearth period, and that comes up a little bit later in the spring. And that can also be a bit tricky if there's not enough food stores. If you're a commercial beekeeper or someone who's interested in nuke sales, or if you have pollination contracts, for instance, down at the coast for blueberry pollination, you're going to want to get your numbers up. And so that's another reason why you've really, really focused on nutrition in the spring. One little word of warning though is be a little careful, because one of the things we're doing as beekeepers is that we're thinking 2 months, 6 months ahead. And are we wanting to have the largest population during the dearth period, or do we want to wait a little bit and time it so that you've got the most bees during your main nectar flow, which is a little later, typically in the June, July. So just a quick review of your food. So your nectar, your sugars are your carbohydrates. I'm not sure. I think you might still be, if you're feeding syrup, it would be probably 2 to 1, 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. You're going to wait till it's a little bit warmer to do the 1-to-1. The 1-to-1 will help stimulate the bees to collect and to, you know, raise their young and such. But you don't want to do it too early, because there's that much extra moisture for them to fan through and to metabolize as they're going. And we've got, you can't get, there's a fine confectioner's sugar that's hard to find. So most of us are actually kind of looking at fondant or maybe a bit of syrup. So the other is there's someone feeding a bit of syrup into a frame feeder in the spring. Those square buckets are awesome for that. There's less spillage that way, we found. So for your food stores, if you notice at the top right, when we're looking at protein, pollen is really, the bee's own pollen is really the ultimate feed. And there's been study after study showing that even if you're buying pollen substitutes, sometimes there'll be a mix of real bee pollen with brewer's yeast or, you know, soya, some of the other substitutes, but the bees do the best on real pollen. Now you look at the bottom there, it says irradiated pollen, and that's because most pollen comes from China now, if you're going to be buying that. So you want to make sure that there's no pesticides in it. So it is a little bit controversial with feeding pollen substitutes, and I've got a paper that I'll share. Learned a cool trick last night with Mikkel about how to, I've got some PDFs I can share tonight, or we can put them up on the Kamloops site, whichever. We'll see how many hands I have. I might try to be an octopus, but they have found, there's been a study by Grosinger a couple of years ago that Dr. Mark Winston from SFU brought to everyone's attention. And that is that pollen substitutes can actually weaken the bees who are raised on it, and it makes them less able to recognize pesticides and to fight them. So, you know, if you're next to a big cornfield where they've got neonics, then you might think twice about pollen. So just a heads up, you know, it's a personal decision, but there's cons as well as pros. The next thing you're going to want to do is, and everyone's itching to do it. I mean, you've got warmer weather than we do, but you want to assess your clusters this time of year and just see how the bees are doing. It's a little bit early, but you can have a lot of variation in size and such. And sometimes those smaller ones are just thriftier bees and they're going to build up and you might be wowed in a month. So it does change. If it's quite small, that's a lot of space for the bees to thermoregulate. So you do want to move them into a smaller brood chamber. And you're going to watch your temperatures this time of year because you can chill brood. It's like we're all excited that they're going to start building, and then we open them up because we can hardly help ourselves, and you end up killing the brood because it's too cold. So you want at least 10 degrees Celsius, and that's only a couple minutes before they start to chill. So be aware of that, please. 15 Celsius is safe. Okay, so you can go in and do like a regular inspection at about 15. So you're checking for the number of bees on the frames, the coverage, and you're also going to be looking for what the brood pattern looks, and if there's brood, you know, just your usual spring things, which is just always exciting because we've been itching to get in there. So some folks, when they're doing this, it depends. You know, for efficiency, sometimes you're trying to do more than one thing at once when you go into your bees, so you're not bothering them too much either. So you could do a little bit of cleaning as you're doing that. You may reverse now, or you might just be going in for a quick peek. Sometimes, like for instance, the top colony, if you were going to push that down into a single box, you might take the second brood chamber and set it aside, but do mark it so that you can reunite it with the same one. It doesn't matter. So there you go. And we'll move on to just a little bit more about whether you're going to reverse your boxes or not. So there are a few studies out that maintain that you are disrupting your bees quite a bit. So they will get over it, but you definitely, as a beekeeper, you want to be weighing the pros and cons. So if you're running 100 colonies, 200 colonies, 300, sometimes you don't have the luxury of not doing cookie cutter beekeeping. But if you've got a smaller apiary, then have a look at your bees and work with them. Some are slower to build up. So it's not always necessary, but you know, ask yourself, is this going to stress or benefit the bees? And if you do move things around, you're going to make sure that the food is on top. There's a little diagram here, which just gives you an idea. So it's on the vertical. So when you reverse it, don't start mixing your frames around. And I see that sometimes with newer beekeepers when I do inspections, and they'll think, oh, I just wanted to spread it around so it was more even. And you have to remember that that nest needs to be warm. Like, we still have cooler night temperatures. So, you know, that dark area is your nest, it's your cluster, it's where your bees are. You know, your brood is ideally in the middle and it's being kept warm by all the nurse bees. So, you know, do be aware of what you're doing when you are in there. You know, you can add, you know, whether or not you use a queen excluder. And again, that's a personal decision. You can add one, you know, a little bit onto spring and then a super, but we're going to, you know, it's a fine balance where you've got to make room for everyone. So, you know, you're aware of possible swarming, but you're also want to getting your, all your mite control and that type of thing taken care of before you really get into production. So a lot of us know this can be later in the spring, can be a little bit tricky. So spring cleaning, someone early on in my beekeeping years gave me a pretty great hack, and that was to try to have some extra equipment with you, especially bottom boards. So if you have some bottom boards that you've got in storage and you've torched them so that they're sterilized, get that tiger torch out and give them, you know, just about burn them and get them really nice and clean. you can actually just pull the old ones and put in a new one, and you're kind of done and you're not disturbing anyone. So, and also when you're spring cleaning, remember how beneficial propolis is for the bees. There's lots of studies saying it's really valuable for human consumption as well. But some people really have a hard time with it, and they kind of curse bees that make a lot of it. But more and more, we're finding how beneficial it is for the health of bees. And if you do scrape a little bit, please save it, because you can sell it. There's places who will buy it from you. So we know that part of good beekeeping is replacing 20% of your brood frames each year. That means that out of 10 frames over 5 years, you're never going to have anything over 5 years. So you're not going to be holding too much disease in your hives. So this is a good time of year to do it. And when you're going through moving your frames, if you've got ones that are really kind of funky and not good, provided they don't have brood already, start migrating them to the outside of your brood chamber. That way, when you are ready to cull them and pull them out, you're not having to sacrifice any brood, or it's just easier to take those nasty frames if they're already on the outside and you're not having to disrupt things. So that was I think Ted K taught me that one. So again, lots of great mentors along the way. He was our previous inspector a couple of inspectors ago. So we're going to be calling broken regular frames. We probably, unless you're queen rearing, not wanting too much drone comb. So that's another thing we're looking for. You're wanting nice tight fits. If your boxes aren't super tight, you're going to end up with a lot of burr comb, and moving through that can really disrupt the bees too. And again, you're going to be scraping and switching those bottom boards out. Personally, I'm not one of those ones who worries about the dead bees, scraping them out regularly. I kind of do it once. I remember there was a beekeeper in the Caribou, Mike Ombach, who said, "Oh yeah, I think it gives them a little extra insulation in the spring." Everyone's got an opinion, but yeah, just work with your bees, and they'll let you know what's working. So your dead outs, don't be in a hurry. I know it's kind of depressing when you go into your bee yard and you've got dead bees, and all you want to do is just kind of like get rid of that whole sort of sad looking hive and kind of move on. But you're going to learn a lot from your dead outs, and it's going to save you from repeating history. So you do want to remove them or block them off from the bees in your apiary. So number 8 hardware cloth, which is like that galvanized screen, will keep bees out. You can just like cut a little piece, a strip, and bend it and put it in your bottom entrance. There's a lot of ways you can block them out. The screen is ideal because it doesn't trap moisture. If you wrap it all up with duct tape or what have you, you're going to end up with a lot of mold. So be aware of that. You're wondering what your cause of death is, of course. So, if you've got good record keeping, you'll know how strong they were in the fall. Did they starve? Well, that's an easy one. Most of you probably know when you've got little bee bottoms in your frame, that's a classic sign of starvation. Have you had a failed queen? I mean, that's an ongoing issue. We've got Dr. Alison McAfee, who will be speaking at the BCHPA semi-annual coming up this month, and she's doing a lot of research on queen failures and what's causing it and what we can do. There's a lot of different diseases. Hopefully mice didn't get in, that you've had entrance reducers to keep them out. I've jumped more than once in the bee yard in the spring when a little mouse, or sometimes they've even got babies, sort of jumps out at you. So yeah, if you're going to want to consider a lab sample, and we'll look at that. I actually did provide some instructions for your website. It's a website that gives you step-by-step on how you can actually submit a sample to the lab. This is also free, other than the cost of shipping, and it's confidential. And I will get a copy of the results as well for the inspectors, so I know if there's an American foul brood outbreak, like Tronquil or wherever, Knutsford. So it's good to know, but again, it is confidential. And so you're going to be looking at your equipment, and if you're ever to, if you can ascertain what's happened, you know, did you have nosema or American foul brood, European foul brood? What do you do with the frames, and what do you do with the honey? And sometimes it's better not to reuse it, and sometimes you don't have to worry. I'm going to show you the next little bit about irradiation, and that is the ultimate. And I'm hoping that's something that maybe club members can coordinate, because there's a minimum of 100 supers to do that. So you can irradiate. Bleach actually can be used for killing American foul brood. So that, and we're talking about your frames. So not ones with honey, a lot of honey, but you need to do 1 part bleach, household bleach to 10 parts water, and you need to soak it for 30 minutes. So that's straight from Steve Purnell at the Beaver Lodge Research Center, our federal lab. Or you can destroy it. Sometimes you just need to cut your losses. So if it looks like it was just maybe a little bit of dysentery because, you know, they were inside for quite a long time, inside the hive for too long, if you had a prolonged cold spell, just clean things up and you can put those back in again. And there was actually, I was at a Western Apiculture Society meeting a couple years ago, and they were just saying that there's actually, the bees do better if you reuse that equipment right away. It's something to do with, you know, we talk about microbiomes all the time, and I guess there's something left on the combs. So if you can reuse them that spring and you're sure they're healthy, do it, okay? So comb sterilization. So it is the gold standard. And in British Columbia, we have what used to be called Iotron and is now called Sterigenics. And it's like this multi-million-dollar facility that last year was very busy sterilizing hospital equipment for COVID-related contamination. So a lot of people had a hard time making appointments last year. They're up and running now, and I know several clubs around the province are doing coordinated efforts to take to transport these supers down there. So it works out to $7.50 a super, which is really quite reasonable, plus GST, but you have to have 100. So you need someone who's got like a horse trailer or a flat deck or what have you. There's a little bit to preparing them, the supers. They need to be wrapped in plastic and then duct taped. And if you're doing a mixed group effort, make darn sure that you use like your own color tape or that you put your name on it, because when they get back, it's just, when they get stacked back in the truck, they're not going to put all of, you know, so-and-so's here. And so it takes a little bit of prep. The Langley Bee Club, Elaine Gary did quite a great little YouTube demo that we had on the BC Honey Producers Facebook page. And so there's a good review there if you're interested. So let me know if you want, I can hook you up with that. You want to make sure though that you're not sending in equipment that has visible signs of American foul brood disease. I don't know how many of you have been able to hold a frame with the sun to your back and actually see what's called scale, but it's when the larva sloughs down to the bottom and it actually gets very, very hard eventually. So when we're doing an inspection and we're checking if your toothpick or your match actually breaks, it's most likely, plus the smell, of course, foul brood's really well named, that scale. So you don't want to include that in sterilizing, because how are you going to keep track of that frame when it comes back, you know, because that's one of your clinical signs of foul brood. So I really encourage the Kamloops group to consider, if you can, and I know, like, I appreciate all the volunteer work that you're doing, and maybe this is for next year, but a lot of clubs actually got the BBC grant, which has been closed off for this year. Unfortunately, now it closed off, I think it was March 1st, but anyhow, they'll, you know, it was like you contribute 20% towards this grant, and the BBC grant and that includes in kind, will pay up to $5,000 for any of these grants. And I'm not aware of the club actually taking advantage of this, and I really encourage you to. So there you go. So it's harping on the same old thing all the time, but Varroa mites are still the #1 problem with our challenges with honeybees. They're just so persistent, and they vector viruses, so they weaken our bees. And so it's really, really important that you monitor for mites and know what your counts are throughout the spring before you put on your honey supers, and treat if warranted and when warranted. So it's more than likely that you're going to need to treat. There's a lot of options. One of my very favorite resources for looking at the different miticides, and including some of the organic ones, is the Tools for Varroa Mite Management, and that's a PDF that I have for you that I can include as well. And it's put together by the Honeybee Health Coalition. That includes American and Canadian researchers. Dr. Medhat Nazar, who just retired as the Alberta apiculturist, has contributed to that group, and there's some excellent information. So you want your baseline, and you want to check every couple of weeks. Don't let those numbers build up on you. The other thing in Kamloops is that you've got a lot of beekeepers now. We know that bees, foragers will go 5K, drones will go longer, even further, looking for love, wherever those drone congregations are, where they do their things. So just don't assume because you've treated that everything's okay. So you're going to be rotating your mite treatments. There is some resistance. Years ago, it was fluvalinate, which is the brand name was Apistan. From the same family now, we have a synthetic pyrethroid called Baverol, same family. So we're trying again because we've taken a little break from that. Most beekeepers I see are using, a lot of them are using Apivar, which is based on Amatraz, and a lot of Albertans got hit last year, and we're wondering if it wasn't because of that. There were 60% losses last year. We'll see how this year is, but you want to rotate it and mix it up for the bees, and don't just put all your eggs in one basket. So, we're going to be using your integrated pest management. That previous coalition has a lot of they have good videos showing you how to monitor, as well as, just sort of the pros and cons of a lot of the miticides for you. So you want to keep the low levels, and if you've got friends nearby who are keeping bees too, you might want to just pick up the phone and say, hey, when are you going to be treating for mites? Maybe we should do it on the same weekend or whenever. And at least, you're going to hopefully start your neighborhood off on a good start. So there you go. Some of you are probably seeing this in your apiaries right now. Sometimes it's alarming, sometimes not. It can be a few things. So we have nosema. It used to be Nosema apis, which is the honeybee nosema. It's a gut disease. Now it's mostly from the Serrana, so which is called a dry nosema. So there's not as much fecal matter with that, so it's a little trickier. Sometimes it's just dysentery, where we've had like a long winter and they haven't been able to fly. That's the best case scenario. And it may be sac-brood virus if the bees are a little weakened. Really just a good nectar flow and good beekeeping and nutrition will help them through that. It's like most viruses, it's like a cold. So we don't actually test for viruses because I think we've got over 40 now on the honeybee. They keep discovering them. To test for them, you have to use a PCR test, which is super expensive. And whether you get a confirmation or not, it's not going to make a difference with how you treat them. So anyways, I'm going to show you how you can send in samples in bees, or you can just scrape some of the fecal matter off of your hive equipment. So we've got one little hack, and this is from Mike Campbell, who has Campbell's Gold. There's a meadery down in Abbotsford, and I think quite a few folks on the coast deal with more dysentery because of the moist weather they have, all the rain. So sometimes they'll just change the pH level in their syrup and add 1 teaspoon of lemon juice to a gallon of syrup. And sometimes that's all it takes to clear it up. So, you might want to experiment with that and get it out. It won't hurt your bees. Again, when you see this, you're going to be wanting to torch the outside of, your woodenware. We mentioned the bleach solution. And actually, the sunshine is going to help you too. So there we go. Now, paper or plastic. So it depends on what you're sending in. So paper is for the bees, and you want to wait 3 days so that they don't come alive after 1 day and scare someone in the post office. So there's some very specific timing here. It's ideal if you can send your sample off on a Monday so it arrives at the lab in Abbotsford before the weekend and just doesn't sit there and linger and get moldy or whatever. So a couple of timing tips there. So again, I believe that Rob may have helped put this instructional on your site, and it's pretty empowering to be able to do that. And just when you do send in a sample, make sure that you put your contact information, because unfortunately Paul has received all these samples and then he gets these results, positive or negative, and doesn't know who to reach. So just follow through with that part as well. So something that mostly commercial beekeepers do, but anyone, if you've got a couple colonies, a few hives, you can even out your colonies throughout the spring. And this is something that I learned from John Gates years ago, where he would just go through and just, he liked to, by sort of mid-spring, to have all of his colonies of the same strength. And it just made things more predictable for him because he was commercial. And to do this, the first thing you have to do is make sure that you understand why some colonies are not doing as well as others. So you want to rule out, if maybe you need an early queen, call up Joe and Marg, get a Hawaiian queen in there and get things roaring again. Do your disease assessment, call me. I'm happy to come and have a look with you. And if you're planning to sell, then you're going to want me to come around and issue a permit anyways. The permits are good for 30 days, so we don't want it too early or too late. Sometimes I will do commercial yards twice in the spring. And you'll do what's called a boost. So you don't want to do this with other apiaries or other beekeepers, because you have the possibility of spreading disease. But in your own operation, boosts are not uncommon, and it's actually a form of swarm control as well. So you're not going to get overbuild in one that's going to end up swarming on you. So you can repeat it weekly, every week to 10 days, and you do need some sort of record to see how they're coming along. Okay, and we'll continue. So something to think about, even though, we still have a little bit of snow on the ground, but some of the spring rites are the queen wasps are going to start showing up. Quite often they show up on your top of your hives, and I'm very quick with a hive tool. I know about you guys, but I know that wasps have a role in our ecosystem, but not in the apiary. So if you can set up traps or lures away to keep them out of your yards, that's ideal, because those queens are the ones who are going to build up the populations and cause those horrible robbing situations later on. So get on top of your wasp populations now when you're out. And I'm not sure about you folks, but here in the caribou, ants are really becoming a problem. So red ants, and they're attracted to the sweet sugar when we're feeding, and there's a lot of different things you can be doing for it, but just make sure that you're aware if you've got a problem, and get some traps out or do what you need to do early, because they can overtake weak colonies. And we got a little bear in the bottom left there, and that's just a reminder that you want to have a fence tester. we keep our fences on year round. We just don't want to take that chance because sometimes bears will, just kind of decide to wander in the middle of winter. It's happened more than once. So make sure that you've got your electric fences on, okay? Because it'd be so sad after your bees doing so well through the winter to go out and have a bear mess. So, and don't remove your introducers too soon. Until the colony is strong enough, they're really going to give them the upper hand of, defending their colony. A reminder, just can't say it enough, to please make sure that you're registered. And I'm not sure about the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. In the Caribou, our invasive plant folks send out a registration so that they can coordinate with their contractors who do pesticide spraying. And in theory, they're not supposed to spray near apiaries. So it's not a perfect system, but it's it's an attempt at cooperation. So we do that. It's a separate, we don't share between the provincial governments list and your area. So, and in Kamloops, you may also need to have a license. In Williams Lake, we sure do. So there you go. So just, keep on top of the paperwork. It's pretty minor, but something happens, it's just good to have that. And the rest is a few reminders. One is usually you have, you host us in March for the semi-annual, but there's some excellent speakers lined up for the third week of March. So there's going to be 7 speakers, and it's free for members. So, but you do need to register in advance. It will be recorded. So, if Zoom fatigue is real for you, you could always just pick up a little bit at a time. But I think there's some great speakers. Dewey Karan is fabulous. If anyone's ever seen his How to Read a Frame demo, you just love him. And he's got some excellent books. He's top notch. So, and Samuel Ramsey, the scientist who discovered that no, honeybees aren't sucking the blood out of bees, it's the fat they're after. I think he's responsible for the printing industry completely revamping every textbook on honeybees in the last 100 years. So Samuel Ramsey there as well. And just a reminder, and not every, you've got the 2 lists going, but gosh, for $40, you're going to get the Bee Scene Journal. And this last one was 64 pages. The contributions were fabulous. And it's just that alone pays for your BCHP membership. So I really encourage you to keep that up. And if there's new beekeepers, be sure that you've got extra copies on hand. You can contact Heather and she'll send you down a box so that you have them for whenever we get to meet again. So thanks. And I wanted to do a shout out to the Kamloops Beekeepers. So I know I think this is your 3rd year doing a calendar. And when I was reviewing for today, I went through some of your notes from the very first calendar you did. And I really, I think the information is just so valuable, and specifically just even for timing. Because when you move to a new area, there's a lot of guesswork. So I've actually made a PDF, and I'll share that with you as well. But I just want to give you a little nudge to maybe take what you have, because it's going to be hard to reinvent the wheel, because a lot of these practices that you've included in your excellent calendar don't change. So I just think you've got the potential to just take it to a different level. And it doesn't have to be that much more work, because you have the written material. But yeah, so congrats, you guys. That's just such an incredible project, and yeah, it's excellent. So that's it for me. I'm happy to take a few questions if we have time. I know we've probably gone over a little bit, but yeah, I'm looking forward to coming out and meeting in the bee yard. For equipment inspections, we're asked to just do it in a driveway. So we are being COVID careful. And, I'm hoping that with the vaccinations rolling out that, I don't know if this summer is too optimistic for maybe a late field day, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and hang in there, everyone. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dianne. Fantastic presentation. Really appreciate it. Wealth of knowledge and a lot of information. One question that has come up on the chat bar is it'll bounce back to an earlier piece that you did, but is there a difference in reversing with a 3/4 versus deep frames? So this will be on your spring when you're reversing.
Okay, so I think the principle is the same. So you don't want to split the cluster. So I think people are doing 3/4 for winter. Some are running 2, some are running 3. Sometimes you can't even get them. It depends on the size of the colony. So sometimes 4. So again, the principle is keep your cluster in the middle. Don't break up the brood, because you don't want to make it harder for the nurse bees to keep it warm. So I hope that helps, but really you're just on a smaller scale. And you may actually find if you're running 3 boxes that you have more frames that don't have anything going on. And depending on the size of the colony, you might want to remove that 3rd for a short while and then put it back on once they build up a little bit. So always think about thermal regulation. Okay, make it easier for your bees. They like to be warm. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. Any other questions? I'm just looking in the chat. There is a chat function at the very bottom. Depending on how your screen is set up, it's usually on the bottom, sometimes along the top. Open up the chat, you can type in and you can send something direct to an individual, or you can do it to everybody. So if you've got a question, please do not hesitate. Now's the time to ask it. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to pop some questions into the chat line.
Thanks, Dan. Will you be letting us know when you're in the Kamloops area, so a few of us can get together, or do you want us to get together and then call you?
I won't be getting together with anyone until our public health officer says it's okay. So I'll be doing individual inspections, and so I'll be prioritizing commercial inspections first. And typically it's the hot area. So I'll be doing Spence's Bridge, Cache Creek, Wallachine, Savna, because they're usually a couple of weeks ahead of you guys. But no, it'll be one-on-one. I mean, last year, I just felt like I was in some sort of weird horror movie coming down. Like I stayed at the, what's it called? The Thompson Inn, where they have that golf course and that little horsey place. I was the only customer for the first night. It was like being in a Stephen King novel. And we didn't know if it was droplets at that point. So it was like, oh my gosh, it was just, and there was nowhere to stop and use a washroom, and like takeout was really dicey. So it's better now. We understand more about the virus, but oh my gosh. So we've been so careful to this point. And with inspections, it's like with beekeeping, it's going to it's so weather dependent. So I'm constantly checking the weather like several times a day, and then I'll just blast down. And I probably will stay. What I usually do is I'll just stay in a hotel for a couple of nights, and I'll just do a blitz and get out and see everyone. So I won't hold you up. The weather will hold you up. I won't. That said, if it's only a couple colonies and if it's real simple stuff, then I will come to you when I can, if I can. But there is this background of the pandemic still going on, so that may be there may be a limitation with that. We also don't know if the variant's going to become a problem. So yeah, it's just finding that balance. So I care about you guys. I care about the bees. I also care about our health. So yeah. So I've got a couple. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple more questions, but I think you had some preceded questions. So why don't you start, and they may cover off, but there's a question around bait boxes and a couple of others.
Right.
You'll see them in the chat. But by all means, there was a couple of people that sent in questions in advance. So why don't you approach those first, Dianne?
So there's one from about the Kamloops calendar talking about bait boxes, and you're not supposed to have exposed comb. That is part of the bee regulation. And I understand Tom Seeley is very involved in baiting, swarms and that type of thing. And so maybe you take your comb to Sterigenics ahead of time so we know that it's clean. There's the thought. Okay, so that may be a compromise. With my inspector hat on, I would say no. Okay. And someone's asked about prophylactic nosema treatment. And so it was a good season without fumagillin being available. It's back again. As the province does not condone prophylactic treatments for anything, so no. And for nosema, really, to get a handle on it, you want to be sending bee samples in the fall, in sort of early to late fall, because in the summertime, once you get a nectar flow, you're not going to pick up those spores. And so the time to do it is September. Send in your 100 bees, get a mix from a couple of colonies, and find out what your spore level is and how many parts per million. And then you can decide if you want to treat in the fall. It's really hard if you have nosema in the spring, you're chasing it, and it's often a losing battle. So that's where we're looking 6 months ahead, 2 months, 6 months ahead. So we're always trying to anticipate what's happening. And there's some beekeepers who are not super keen on fumagillin because in the manufacturing process, they use a salt material, and they're finding it's quite hard on bees. So it's one of those, the whole idea of, what's the difference between a poison and a medicine? So if you don't have to use it, don't. Yeah. So for someone who's purchasing nukes, there's a question about that. It's the seller who's responsible for calling me for having an inspection done, and then I issue a permit. They give you a copy of the permit when you buy the nukes, but that's not an unreasonable question or expectation from you as a buyer. And it's actually a nice service because it protects the seller, so that whoever buys the bees can't just say, oh, well, you sold me really lousy bees. So there's that end, and then and then so that's for the seller, and then for the buyer, you have a reasonable expectation that you've got healthy bees. So here's the thing too, when we talk about Varroa mites, is that I'm not allowed to issue a permit for anything over 1% Varroa mite infestation level. So that's early in the spring, but as we know, the Varroa life cycle grows exponentially through the summer. So sell those nukes early and get on top of your mites early, because it's recognized that that they are a huge problem. So yeah. Someone's asking about Nosivit, which I believe is a supplement. I don't use it, but I've seen it. Is that the one out of Alaska? It's one of the herbal remedies, lemongrass and that type of thing. So yeah, I've experimented with some of those as well. I mean, Honeybee Healthy, and there's not a lot of research on a lot of these, other than maybe the manufacturers. So do no harm. If your bees seem to like it, and you can afford it, it's fine, but there's not an awful lot of data on it. There was a seaweed product from Ireland that was being handed out as a sample at Apiary in 2019. So I gave that a whirl. I mean, you want to stay open. You don't want to ever close your off to new practices, and organic ones too. Yeah, just use cautiously, but it's not a replacement for good management. Yeah. So for export permits, great question, Rob, about if you're selling out of province or between bee districts. The bee districts, you can get an idea by just looking at the inspectors and who are assigned different areas. And if you want to sell to Alberta, then you're gonna need an inspection from me. I submit my results to the provincial apiculturist, who shares it with the Alberta apiculturist, and then they agree that the bees can be sent. So it takes a little while to do that. It can be done for certain, and then between bee areas, there's an advantage to us because we have different profiles. So we have, for instance, beekeepers who overwinter in Cache Creek, but they're from like the Bulkley Valley. And so we make sure when they're going back and forth that they're not spreading any disease. And I think, you know, with COVID in the last year, we're really appreciating just how those hot spots can be. And so, yeah. So I think that was the end of the chat. And I don't know if there's any other.
Yeah, I'll just see if there's any others, Dianne. Great opportunity for you to, take advantage of it. Oh, Dave, looks like you have a question you want to ask. Go ahead.
Yes, it's regarding oxalic acid as a replacement for Apivar in the spring by doing a 3-week dribble method. Is that something that's occurring in our neighborhood? I know in Europe they use it quite a bit, and we don't seem to be using it as much here.
So the good news is that we're finally seeing some research, good Canadian research revving up on oxalic acid. We're behind on it. You know, Scandinavia has been using it for 20 years. So I like the dribble method. I'm not fond of the fumigation. If you look at your bee suit, if you're fumigating, you'll notice it's super white, and that's because of the vapors. So be really, really careful. Make sure you've got a proper mask on. You may be cooking your lungs. So I remember Les Eccles, who used to run the tech transfer program for the Ontario Beekeepers Association. And he was in Kamloops, was it 3 years ago? And he just said you could do an entire presentation on vaporizers and safety and efficacy and dosage. So absolutely, oxalic is effective and the bees are not resistant to it. So the organic acids are good that way. So formic and oxalic, absolutely. And I still use like Ontario issued like a how-to, and so that's what I go by, and it's easily available. Yeah.
Do you know of anybody?
No, by all means.
Do you think it's possible to just use the organic acids rather than anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. You can use formic, you can use organic acids. I don't use synthetics at all. So there's also Thymovar, which is the thyme-based oil, which is more of a summer treatment. And there's also HopGuard too. I experimented that with last year. It's kind of this sliming mess. You don't want to be squeamish if you're going to use it, but it has better ratings in the studies for efficacy than the first time they rolled out HopGuard. They had a problem with the delivery system, so now they've got these little soaked strips that you bring in. It's this ugly brown stuff, but it works. So for those who aren't keen, we have so many tools in our Varroa mite management kit. There's very few reasons not to find one that works with your philosophy and with your bees. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions that anybody had? Feel free to chime in verbally. If you do, you just have to unmute yourself and we'll manage that.
Dianne, it's Joe.
Hi, Joe.
You can't use formic acid when the temperature is below 10 above at night. See.
Exactly. So yeah. So
that's one of the drawbacks.
Okay. So what happens is that you're still getting a cluster in your early spring, and so the fumes don't get dispersed throughout the hive early. But some people don't treat as early as you do because they're not selling nukes, so they can wait a little while before they do their formic acid treatments, and by then the nights are warmer. So
Right.
yeah, so it's really, and that's where you need to figure out what your goals are with your colonies and what your timing is going to be, because it does differ not only from region to region, but from beekeepers. But thanks for bringing that up, Joe, for sure. The other thing with formic acid is that you should not be feeding sugar syrup at the same time as you're using it, because it can be really hard on the bees and the queen. And
Right.
I don't know if you remember Dougie Gordon, who was an inspector with Jamie. He also worked with Jamie McDonald and worked with Nod Apiary that has the one formic product. And they confirmed, they didn't back it up with a study, but they said, you know, anecdotally, yes, don't do the two together. So wait on your formic. Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on oxalic and the one you mix and put it in paper towels? I've had good reports about that one too.
The shop
Glycerin.
towel.
Yeah, glycerin.
Right. So yeah, I think that was a Randy Oliver presentation.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally have not done it yet, and I have not found sort of the ultimate instruction and research paper that says absolutely it does work. So I can't give you like a solid answer on that. And I don't actually understand why it would be an advantage over just the dribble method.
It's easy to put in. You just lay your sheets on top of the frames in the bottom super and replace them every time they're gone.
But I've done the dribble method and it takes like a minute. So yeah.
Well, okay.
You know,
I know, to each his own.
Well, it's not just to each their own. There's also there were some question marks about the glycerin method. So, and as an inspector, I can't really say yes, do it unless I've got something to back it up with right now. So there's always going to be people. I mean, that's how beekeeping has always been, is people experiment to find better ways.
But they use it in the Okanagan. 2 or 3 places.
Yeah.
Okay, Murray, looks like you have a question. I'll open the line.
No,
up there.
sorry, I just muted, but
Okay, no problem. I see Mikhail has put a link for the trickle method on the chat forum, so you can grab that and go to the site. So
Okay, great.
you can also look at Randy Oliver's site. He does have it on there too with what he's done.
Yeah, and I hear Randy's going to be a little quiet for a while, and unfortunately he has I think it's a melanoma mouth cancer right now, so that's going to be slowing down some of his projects. I think his sons are going to carry on the work for a little while, and let's hope that he has a good outcome. So I know a lot of people are huge fans. I also know as we go that our technician is has an anniversary tonight. So so thank you, Mikkel, and thank you to your wife for being very understanding.
he did tell us he had another commitment tonight. We didn't know it was his anniversary.
Oh.
So thank you for sharing that with us, Diane, because he just said, well, it is a bit of a conflict, but I will be available. So we didn't get the details, but now we know.
So kind of lost eye contact.
Well, that's fair. We understand that. So okay, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. It looks like everything is there. Rob, anything that you had just in closing? Oh, you're muted. You got to unmute. Can you unmute him on your end? I can't seem to do it from here, Mikhail.
Can I do it? Oh, here, let me try.
There we
Oh,
go.
There you go.
Yes.
There you
Nothing
go, Rob.
to that, except thanks, Diane. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. It was
All
really nice
right.
to see everyone.
Thanks,
Okay.
Diane. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks very much, Diane. I'm just going to share screen here again quickly, just with the um, agenda again. Just in closing, I want to first of all take the opportunity to thank you on behalf of the Kamloops Beekeepers Club for taking the time to put together a presentation and deliver it to our club. Very valuable information. I think there was a lot of insight there, and I certainly know there's a number of people that'll be reaching out to you, I'm sure, independently as time goes on. So I want to thank you for that. Certainly also want to thank Mikhail and Ian for the work in pulling it all together so that we were able to do it and make it work in a virtual world. So thank you to all of you. Next meeting, just so you know, the board is actually going to be meeting in April on the 13th. So that meeting date may change because we are finding that that's a conflict with the provincial because they hold it on their second Tuesday. So we may in fact be moving our board meetings ahead just so that a number of us can also attend the provincial meeting. But currently that's what we'll be doing, and it'll be at 6 o'clock. The next general meeting for all of you will be on May the 11th, but we will be sending out some information with regards to the semi-annual and some of the guest speakers and an educational component. So you will be getting that for later in this month. And certainly for next month, we'll be looking at, again, forwarding on some vital educational information to you. We'll keep you informed, but if at any time you're interested in being a part of our information that you want to put forward at the board meeting, there is a process, the same as it is on the provincial, and that's simply by notifying us through the website or directly to any one of us that are board members, and putting through what it is you'd like added to the agenda. We'll add it to the agenda, and you are more than welcome to join us. You won't have a vote on that board, but you will have the ability to speak to the issue, and you'll be welcome in the gallery as we go through the process. So that's the stepping stones in the process. We're going to keep these general meetings to fun, lively interaction where they're meant to be very informative, and you will get your committee reports will also be happening. So any of the people that I announced earlier, if there's an active piece that's coming forward, they will be presenting that because we will be asking for committee reports as well as a portion of the meeting at the general meeting. So any questions on format structure before we move to adjourn? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask if there is.
Thank you, Bryce, for running the meeting.
You're very welcome, Joe. Great to have you on, and thanks thanks for your trust in the technology.
Well, this is about the sixth one we've seen, so we're starting to get used to it.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. We might be doing it for a little longer, but hopefully not too much longer. I'm ready
Right.
to see people face to face. I'm you know, I'm kind of done with this virtual world, but I realize we need to do it.
So are we. Yeah, but it works. So what can we say?
That's right. Yep. As I always say, I'm not afraid of COVID. I just respect it. So, having said that, I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. Can I get somebody? Oh, it looks like I got hands up all over the place. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Stay in touch. Diane, stay healthy and safe. And we'll look forward to having you back on our agenda again very soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye for now.